Hi, I'm Lyndsey Parker, and I'm about to chat with Rolling Stone magazine founder Jann Wenner about his new memoir, Like a Rolling Stone, on Under the Covers. You had a lot of iconic covers throughout the history of the magazine. What would you say are your favorites, or the ones that just stand out to you?
Well, the one of John Yoko, their second naked one that Annie Leibovitz took, which is taken 3 days before he died, is certainly probably the most iconic, recognizable, famous. I was just a car wreck of emotional, I was distraught and upset and, very moved by all the events. And so, just a last thought, last little bit of a prayer to John. And I wrote it by hand, and I had it really snuck into the issue in a place where nobody could find it, right where the staples are, right in that binding. And never told anybody about it. Somebody found it. And ultimately, it made it way past Yoko, who kind of made it public or something like that. Having said that, there's so many beauties in there. There's great. Name the star when we've done something, really, I think, exceptionally pretty. I don't know how to pick one or two or three out. I mean, there's 1,500 of them. I can't. Help me. What are yours?
Well, I'm curious, actually, in light of Free Britney, framing Britney Spears, what's going on with Britney, how you look back at the David LaChapelle cover.
David LaChapelle did great photo paintings, Rolling Stone, but one of the most memorable was the Britney Spears one where she was holding the gay Teletubby, the purple Teletubby with the triangle. It was brilliant. I mean, it just mocked all the silliness going on about that thing, and also was a real insight into Britney. I mean, in general, he got her in her little teenage stuff on her bicycle and wearing short shorts and hot bikinis, and her own self-sexualization was so strong, and this was just representing that. We weren't doing anything to overtly sexualize her or just pick up our cues from her.
I believe it was controversial at the time. I don't think she was 18 yet, and there was, obviously a sexy cover. You're saying that she had agency in it. It was her idea, or she was into it.
I don't know that it was her idea, but she certainly had agency. Certainly everything you look at Britney, and see her, she knew what she was doing this entire time. She wasn't just innocent of showbiz. I mean, her credit was great stuff. It was great work. It's memorable. And it's not at all perverse or weird or anything. She's fully clothed. She's just making a statement about her sexuality. And that's what her music did. That was the message out there, is that if you think, the teenagers are not coming close to this level of adult sexuality, you're mistaken. You're not talking to your kids, or you're not seeing what's going on in society.
There were, covers with sexy women on them, women who weren't even necessarily musicians themselves. Like, I'm thinking Jenny McCarthy with the hot dog, Jen Aniston, with, the backside. I think those were among your most successful newsstand sales. Was that like something, given the fact that at the same time you were doing, rock reporting and political reporting, what was the mindset of kind of doing those sexy covers?
First off, there were not enough women to put on the cover overall. The general complaint is how we've ignored women, right? Or that used to be years ago, So if you have an opportunity, anybody talented, you put them on the cover as quick as possible. And in most cases, there are people who had good reason to be on. Jenny McCarthy was a movie star. Jen Aniston, we don't even have to explain that. We are one of many TV actors, many people from Friends or from whatever, from movies, to put on the cover. Do we want them to be sexy? Absolutely. Unless they're unknown, they sell. And we had an annual cover issue from the hot issue, which always was the opportunity, but over the hottest woman of the time was. And we did it once or twice with guys. It never worked, right? But Cindy Crawford by Herb Ritz. Yes, beautiful women generally sell.
I've interviewed the GoGos, and I feel like they've talked. Yeah, I've talked. Well, I think it's actually in their documentary that they were pissed off about their cover, the underwear cover. The first cover?
I think because the headline said the GoGos on top.
The second one said GoGos on top. The first one said the GoGos put out.
And
the GoGos put out. I think that's what upset them more than the picture itself, which was by Annie.
It was the headlines. They've got a point, they were meant in fun and silliness. I think at that time, I'm not sure that people were that sensitive to the kind of sexism that would surround such a headline today. Nobody would probably put that out today as a headline. What years were it? It was in the 80s, I think?
GoGos, with that cover probably was 83, maybe 82.
So we're talking about 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Times are different. And of course, we get some things wrong. Made a mistake on either this, that, the other covers maybe we shouldn't have had, and some few covers we missed. I think that we didn't give Led Zeppelin their proper due at the beginning, and they were angry about it. And finally, when they finally gave it to doing a cover story, Jimmy Page showed up at the cover session with a bouquet of dead roses to be sent. That's very nice. But my favorite, I guess, remains Roger Taylor, because the opening mail one day, and somebody walked in, there was one of these airplane courtesy bags, the so-called barf bag that you can pin up and puke into, and he wrote a really nasty letter on that bag to me. I thought that was funny, I think very elegant. We've had very respectful relationships with artists. I mean, there's been one or two. I forgot. Buddy Miles. He got a bad review. He showed up at the office one day, 300 pounds, big guy. I ran out of the office, but we sent the biggest man in the office out to deal with him, but he was much bigger. He pinned him up against the wall over the water cooler, and it's raging around. He didn't hurt anybody, but that was the most disgruntled. That was the one.
Whoa. I'm curious, since we were talking about covers, when you say covers we shouldn't have or covers we missed, what comes to mind when you say that?
We had Donny Osmond on the cover once. I don't think that was probably,
I'm for that.
Like the Donny Osmond thing could have been, but he was, for some reason, wearing a tool belt. It didn't quite work. It was bizarre.
Well, since we're talking about 70s teen, I do want to ask about the David Cassidy cover, which I think was super iconic, probably the most iconic photo ever taken of him.
It was great. It was a great cover. It sold out. It was career change for David. It was a very important cover in his life because it got him out of the trap of being on a teenage TV show. And David wanted to be a serious musician.
And I guess if Rolling Stone has ever come under fire for having sexy covers, there's some equal opportunity there.
Listen, there's been a lot of men with their shirts off on the cover, looking provocative and sexy and hot. Just as you're fairly pointing out, there is women.
The reason I'm chuckling is the story in your book about the Al Gore cover, and how there were rumors that his the front of his pants had been enhanced, had been photoshopped. Yeah. Like where that rumor's, I think he got a kick out of that, right?
He did. I mean, I think I mentioned in there that we started hearing about it, like, either on the internet or the radio, and so we're sitting there. Al called me and says, what? I'm hearing all these things, and people are coming up to me. He says, let me just ask you something. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I said, it's a good thing, Al.
That's a good thing.
I've always thought that sex appeal was one of the big facts of rock and roll. The look, fashion, style, and sex appeal. I mean, what is rock and roll about? Let's start with the beginning of it. Dancing, getting close, the beat, getting worked up. I mean,
the baby boom generation was at the forefront of it in the 60s, and people like yourself still are. Now, some people from your generation have become very conservative. And does that dishearten you at all to see that?
No, because I don't see it. I still believe in peace and love. No, I think my generation did a great job, still in there, the most of it. And part of the reason I wrote the book is to make sure that that's understood. There's been enough culture war bullshit. There's been enough. The truth is, we did a lot, meaningful, important stuff. In why I started Rolling Stone, it was part of the vision that we had of the music itself had enormous social, political, moral, ethical messages, powerful. The politics of Bob Dylan, and I felt the music was dealing with it, gave me the opportunity to deal with, and was the better way of looking at politics through the prism of what the rock and roll poets were saying then in our little small rock and roll magazine. That really kind of put us on the map.